Deputy Hildegard Naughton and Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick, and you have 10 minutes. You're sharing your time.
Yes, I understand, so thank you, Ms. Corda. In 2002, the then Minister for Health and Children, Deputy Micheál Martin, published the COD report entitled Acute Hospital Bed Capacity, a National Review. In his written foreword, Deputy Martin said, and I quote, "For some time it has been evident that the capacity of our acute hospital system has not kept pace with the increasing demands being imposed on it. The consequences of that undercapacity are well known, that is, cancellation of elective admissions, long delays in accident and emergency departments, waiting lists for elective procedures and unacceptably high bed occupancy levels in the major hospitals." End quote. I use this to merely illustrate that very little has changed. Deferral of operations, enormous waiting lists and terrible stories of elderly and ill patients lying for days on trolleys. My point is that we must construct a way forward for our health system, and I mean this Parliament, not the government on its own, not parties on their own, and definitely not anybody with ideological and immutable beliefs in the supposed best way forward. There is no perfect way, but there is surely a much better way to provide better results for our citizens. From the days of Dr Brown, ideas for the reform of the health service have been stymied by vested interests, medical, political and others. If we go on in this fashion, our health service will never be fixed. If this debate was to result in members of this House merely leaving down their political cudgels and resisting the temptation to knock metaphorical lumps out of one another, it would be something. It would be something for the Irish people to think that we're serious about fixing the system and not playing politics with it. This is a new Dáil and it's time for a new start. There have, of course, been improvements in the health service over recent years. If we're honest, we would acknowledge that the last 3 ministers have made improvements. But how can a minister direct health policy when they are constantly firefighting? I will use the comparison of my own constituency in Galway to that of Cork to illustrate the problems of health management thinking in this country. These are the people who advise the Minister and devise the service plans year after year, decade after decade. Cork is presently in the early stages of planning a new 300-bed acute hospital in order to relieve pressure on other hospitals and to provide state-of-the-art accommodation. One of the first things that was stipulated was that the chosen site should be at least 50 acres and preferably 100 acres. This was in order to give room for expansion and the provision of all necessary ancillary services. There's nothing shocking in that. In fact, it proves good planning. Now let me turn to University Hospital Galway. What are the plans there? Well, the plan is that they are building a 75-bed extension, an extension where health management cannot tell us how many additional beds it will bring, an extension on not a 100-acre or even a 50-acre site, but a 42-acre site, a site that is hemmed in by major roads on all sides and where there are huge traffic issues and an almost inability to get parking. A site that is hugely cramped, a site where a car park had to be removed in order to make space for a new mental health unit. University Hospital Galway is not a small local hospital. It's a major acute hospital and one of the busiest in the country, with the longest waiting lists for inpatient and outpatient treatment in the entire country. It's a regional centre of excellence, offering treatment in a variety of specialisations to patients from Donegal to Clare and as far east as Athlone. UHG has a near 98% occupancy rate and is bursting at the seams. The internationally recognised figure of full occupancy is 85%, and yet they are building an extension costing 70 million on this already crammed site and cannot tell us how many beds, if any, it will add. I and others have been months trying to get an answer, and they simply cannot tell us. The real fear, not unfounded, is that spending this huge sum will provide perhaps only 7 additional beds. All this would be bad enough if there was not a second hospital campus in Galway in Merlin Park, which has been vastly underutilised over the years. A campus on a massive 150 acres of state-owned land with acres and acres of empty parkland right beside our dual carriageway system. A campus where the people of Galway and the west of Ireland need a state-of-the-art, modern acute hospital with sufficient beds. We urgently need a plan to relocate UHG to Merlin Park on a phased basis. I believe that the local consultants need to take the lead on this. We've had the COD report on the need for extra bed capacity and the Hanley report on the need for extra consultants, neither implemented. We have lower numbers of consultants than most of the developed world. This needs to be addressed. To address it, those consultants need more beds, and we need the development and funding of proper primary care centres in strategic locations to take pressure off our hospitals and A&E.
Thank you very much, Deputy